Well, welcome from Cyber UK. I'm here with Pelin from NHS Login to discuss passkeys. Well, firstly, thank you for joining us. Um, I think it'd be really good for the viewers to understand where did the kind of the pain point come from that made NHS consider passkeys in the first instance?
Well, nice to meet you, Ollie, and thank you for inviting us. So, also, I'm so impressed. I was here yesterday. The talks, like, um, the kind of culture of people here, the passionate, how they are passionate about the security and intelligence. So, well done on all of that.
That was very kind.
So, passkeys, it has started with. We had both, NHS, the business side of the things that motivated us, but also user side of the things.
Yes.
So as a user experience designer, I came in with the user side of the story. What they are struggling with, the existing login methods that we had, which was the password and your OTPs.
Okay.
So the issues around that, I don't know if I need to tell you the password side of the story. I think
Yeah.
we're all been through that, like pulling our hair. The OTPs, they cost money to program. We're not in money business, NHS login, but you want to make the best use of your funding. So if you can cut costs and it's going to benefit users, why won't you do that? So we were collectively, NHS login is the client, the team, engineering and research and design. We were quite collective on that. We were like, I think we need to look at this. So the user side of the story, when it comes to pain points they had, was, some people couldn't receive OTPs on time. It can be quite critical when you're trying to access a health service.
Sure.
If I can't get my OTP and because I'm trying to log into my TikTok, that doesn't matter. But when there are consequences when you're trying to access a health service. So that was very important for us, in terms of motivation, to provide something that's fast and also secure.
Right.
And that takes away a lot of responsibility. Not responsibility, but with passwords, you have to provide support when people don't remember it, and you have to store it and manage it, make sure it's kept secure. With passkeys, there's less of that for the program for NHS login to manage as well. So there was a lot of motivation there for us to explore passkeys.
Great. So you identified this need, you identified a kind of a pain point for the users of NHS login.
Yes.
So how do we go from identifying this need to,
Yes.
What's the process that NHS had to go on to do the user research, really
Yes.
understand that it was going to work in practice and really kind of ideate along that journey?
Exactly. So I mentioned this in my talk yesterday too. User-centered design is in everything we do at NHS login. And again, passkeys were not an exception to that. So we started with user research, trying to understand. We understood there was a problem, they needed something, but what was that thing they need? And also the thing we had in mind, was that appealing to them? Was that going to work with them, sit well with them? So we did 5 rounds of user research.
Okay.
And with 66 participants in total.
Yes.
We were quite thorough. The participants included those who are, it was users of what diverse need, and included those who are data skeptic. We wanted to see, what's their attitude. They're not gonna, they are not your early adopters.
Right.
But NHS login, we are a service for everyone. We want to make sure nobody's left behind, and we take them all on the journey with us. So we want to see their attitude. So research helped us a lot in that sense. So that's how it started. Obviously, there's all the technical side of it. I think I would say the technical and research and design throughout this whole process informed one another, so they went hand in hand. They were not done in isolation. We worked in agile teams, we always do, and in cross-disciplinary teams. So for example, proof of concept
Yes.
that we have done is an example of that collaboration, where we had a day, everybody came together. One of the struggles with passkeys when you're working with it is just very device-led, and user experience could be different on an iPhone versus Android phone,
Yeah.
right? It was so hard for us also to get our heads around and when we first started working on it, it was there was not a lot of information documented for us to use, so we had to test. So proof of concept, test and learn. So we had a day, we got together, tested on sorts of devices. So it kind of allowed us to see say, yes, this is technically feasible, we can do it, and we were able to document all the different kinds of behaviors on different devices, also like errors,
Yes.
which then allowed us to be prepared and to design for both like happy as well as unhappy scenarios that users might come across. So that was, I would say, if I want to give a high level overview,
Yeah.
this is the process in a
Yes.
nutshell you would expect. I guess I would add that we've done 5 rounds of research because we're always very thorough before we
Yes.
put anything in front of the users. So we do, our due diligence is always done. But I think maybe now if another project or a service is going up, looking
Yeah.
to adopt passkeys in their journeys, hopefully they might have an easier time, because I think it's so much like better documented.
Yes.
The user experience is a bit more streamlined than it was before. Also these sessions that we have done like yesterday,
Yes.
like we are sharing the knowledge. People are now coming forward with what they have learned by experimenting and implementing. So I think it's going to help a lot with those now just adopting it. So they may not have to be so rigorous like with their testing. They may not have to do 5 rounds. It all depends on your user base and the service. You will know best.
And that's probably good context for the viewers. So when did you do it? When did you start the project? And then how long did it take to do those 5 rounds of research? And
Yes,
seminar?
I had that question yesterday as well from a researcher, and I had such a difficult time like remembering. It felt like long time ago, but it was only last year. So we actually started looking at passkeys from a broader, we had a broader vision looking at the authentication in general, what we can do in that space, and passkeys came out of it. So that started back in 2023, early 2023, I would say. And then maybe it was around April, May, I'm not sure exact months, but a couple of months later we are like, okay, we are going to zone in, focus on passkeys, because that's going to deliver the most value for our users as well as the program NHS login. So it started, I would say, I guess from maybe summer 2023, starting with all that researches, rounds and different methods that we have used, moderated, unmoderated, technical testing, all of that. And I would say it took us in total, if you look at that the original starting point, the authentication methods, I would say a year roughly to put it in front of the users. So we went live 6th of February 2024. I remember the day better than my sister's birthday, and I'm sorry. I've got priorities.
Yeah, no. But that's really good. And so you've mentioned that, because you were being quite pioneering, the documentation wasn't good, the understanding wasn't good, and things have improved even since you went live in kind of February of 2024 or thereabouts. So if you were doing this again, how long do you think it would take you to achieve a similar outcome if you started today in kind of, May 2025?
If I started today and there was an example like NHS login and I went to see their talks, I get to speak to them, I would have had it would be, I want to say, okay, if it's again a government service like NHS where you can't take risks, you still need to test. I think we would be very thorough with our testing again. 5 rounds, probably not. But it would definitely, it's probably going to be really inaccurate to say, but it's definitely going to be less than a year. 6 months to a year, I would say.
Amazing.
But we know there are other projects, they have done it. Virgin, I'm aware, have done passkeys, and we were quite involved with it as well. And they have implemented and launched it much quicker than us because it's the device that they were implementing it for, and the way they proposed it to users was different. So they could take more risks without doing user research, which we couldn't. And I think they have done it, I don't know, I would say 6-7 months, I guess. I'm quite aware that it didn't take them that long. Honestly,
that's really great.
Yes.
And so I guess, is there anything else that you would share with the viewers in terms of kind of key points to take away as we encourage everyone now to adopt passkeys as a default authentication mechanism in order to make the UK the safest place to work?
Exactly. So again, I think I'll go back from our talk yesterday. So we had these key insights to share. So I would share the same things. So in terms of if you're thinking of it, if you're a designer or you're an R&D team looking into this, what I would recommend from our learning, the key thing is it's quite tempting at the beginning to try to educate users around what passkey is and trying to add all of that into your journeys, like because you're thinking, if I tell them more about this, if they understand what this is and how secure it is and how it works, they will adopt it. But what we have seen in research when we've done that was overwhelming users. What people really want, like I know from myself, is we just want things to simply work. That's what they want, especially when it comes to authentication methods. Like you want to be as invisible as possible. They shouldn't even know what they are doing. That's the best thing, isn't it? So if you're trying to front load a lot of information for them to process, passkeys are it's a new concept you're already introducing, and then you're just putting more on top of it for them to work on. And then that actually can have the opposite effect in terms of like, it can discourage them to actually set one up, if you know what I mean. It's, as I said, it's very device-led experience. So users, we have seen in research, users had a much clearer understanding of what it is and what they have done once they have actually been through the process. So you need to let the user go through it, just learn by actually using the thing. That would be my recommendation. Obviously, there'll be parts where you can now educate users more, like maybe a help center article or a support center, but maybe the user journey is not that. That's from what we have learned. I guess in terms of, if you're looking at this, you're a business owner, you run a government service, public service.
Yeah.
So we have done some like post-launch survey with our users who has actually set up a passkey. We wanted to understand what motivated them to actually use a passkey, because when we first launched passkeys, it was in the settings. We didn't go with marketing, nothing. Users just basically innocent come to a settings area to maybe change a mobile phone number, and then they see passkey, they were curious and they set it up. So like, perfect. We want to speak to these people. They just got curious. What motivated them, right? Out of 92 participants, 75 said to make login quicker.
Wow.
So that is the key motivation. However, I will add that, so when we have done that question, like, why you set up a passkey, we gave users options, a list of options they could choose from, and they could choose only one.
Yeah.
One of the options was account security.
Yes.
So the reason for that was we wanted to understand how much of a role security plays when it comes to driving adoption. So it doesn't mean people didn't care about security, but what it meant, not just like, from research, I'm speaking based on research, not just around passkeys, but broadly speaking, for people, security is not a decision-making factor. It is, I will say, it's the baseline. It is given. It is just expected. When people come to, especially government services, I will say, highlight this, like the NHS, when they come to your service, they immediately assume you're a government provider, you're secure. And anything, they trust that you do the work for them to find whatever is the most secure and recommended option. So you don't need to try to, sell it to user in terms of security, because they already think this is probably, you've done your due diligence. This is secure. You're telling me I'll adopt this. You just need to make it easier for them, support them throughout that journey. I guess, for me, that was the key takeaway. I suggested, like, if somebody was sleeping throughout the whole session, like, take that away, because security is not a question. It's not a question in the user's mind. It's not even a choice. Like, you have to provide it.
Well, an amazing story. You've gone from nothing to a full implementation within a year. You think others will be able to achieve it in 6 months. We've heard that it was the seamlessness and the speed of the login which ultimately convinced them to adopt it, rather than security benefits. And so thanks for pioneering something we now can roll out over the UK.
Yeah, thank you too. For inviting us, sharing this story, what we've learned. It's been an amazing experience for us too.
Have a great rest of the conference.
Thank you. You too.